this mini lecture, we'll talk about concluding your speech. Now, the conclusion of the speech is equally important to the introduction of the speech. In the conclusion, you want to signal that the ending of your speech is approaching, and you would do this through a transition statement. You also want to summarize again what your main points were. Remember that saying, tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them again what you just told them. You hope to elicit some type of audience response. What is it that you want the audience to remember having listened to your speech? And then create an impact one last time. Your book calls this a wow statement. We could call it a memorable closer. We could call it a clincher. Something that you can use to effectively end your speech. Oftentimes, what you do in your conclusion ties into what you did in your introduction and the attention getter in your introduction. So let's break these down into smaller parts. First of all, we're going to signal the end of the speech. We're going to use a transition. When we're done with that final main point, we're going to use some statement to let your audience know that your speech is coming to an end. It could be something like, well, let's wrap this all up now. Or you could certainly say, in conclusion, although I would suggest you try to be a little more creative. So once you've signaled that conclusion, you want to summarize the main points. Reinforce again the central idea and main points of your speech. This is not being redundant. It is helping your audience understand and remember the important parts of your speech. After you summarize those main points, you want to try to elicit an audience response. What do you want this audience to take away from the speech? If I was thinking about the outline example about growing your own vegetables in your garden in your backyard, remember I was talking about green beans, tomatoes, and cucumbers, so I could summarize that. Today, you've learned about ways to grow different types and recipes for green beans, tomatoes, and cucumbers. I hope you now know that it's easy to grow gardens right in your own backyard. That would be eliciting a response. This would be the audience takeaway from the speech. And the final thing you want to do is use a wow statement, a memorable closer, some way to wrap up the speech. Now, the same strategy you use to capture the audience's attention in the introduction can be used to finish the speech in the conclusion. So if you provided some facts and statistics in your introduction and in your attention getter, you could conclude with providing some other ones. Perhaps you started a story and you're going to end the story in your conclusion. You could certainly use quotes, you could use humor, you could again pose a question, or you could reference yourself, the audience, or an event. You want some way to signal to the audience that this creates one lasting impact. Now, some special notes about the conclusion. You are not Porky Pig. Do not just say, "That's all, folks." You need to have something to wrap up the speech. Linking the introduction and the conclusion helps to bring the speech full circle. And just as it is with the delivery during the introduction, eye contact and vocal variety is extra important during the conclusion. If you remember all these points, I'm sure you can create a fantastic conclusion to your speech.